Here are 5 mixing tips that are so powerful you just might feel guilty using them. Number 1, you can steal a pro mix frequency curve. So I made a song that was very similar to the soundtrack from the Doom games. This is what mine sounds like. And this is what my reference track sounds like. I was close, but not quite there. You can see I have a lot more low mids, and there's a lot more just muddiness going on in my mix overall. But there are plugins like Ozone that allow you to steal the frequency curve from your reference, and you can capture it, and then you can apply it to yours. Listen to the before and after of my mix. And then listen to how close it is to the reference track that I have now. Let me turn that off and let's listen to the difference between the two of them now. And then let's fix it. That straight up feels like cheating, but you can absolutely do this. This is also really powerful to instantly show you what your mix is missing, and you can go back and fix it on the mixing side of things as well, not just the mastering. The second trick is use auto-tune first, then use manual tuning. Listen to these vocals here.
My door is open, you can come inside, so let's make plans tonight, make plans tonight.
So you can see there's a lot of vocal layers that's going on here, and that can get really overwhelming very quick. So what I like to do is first and foremost, I add auto-tuning plugins first before I go and manually tune. This will get me very close, especially if you've done a great job tracking the vocals. This is a great vocalist. He's great at what he does, and he's super professional. And so I can throw on Metatune, Auto-Tune, or any other auto-tuning plugin, and I get 90% of the way there. And then I can make my final adjustments with manual tuning inside of Melodyne or Repitch after that. This saves a ton of time because you don't have to edit every single part if you don't have to. It kind of feels wrong because you're letting a plugin do the majority of the work, and there's this thought that you should go through and manually edit everything. But remember the golden rule. If it sounds good, it is good. And if we can get it sounding great quicker, we can make more music. Trick number 3 is top-down mixing. And if you've never heard of this before, you are in for a treat. What I like to do is I like to add all of my stuff to a single bus. So you can see all of these vocals are on a single bus. You can see all of these guitars are on a single bus. All of these drums are on their own bus. And what I can do is I can process all of these guitars at once. Instead of adding plugins to the individual guitars, I can just add it to the guitar bus and mix all of them at once. And you can see that a lot of these guitars just don't really have anything else going on at all. I can see that I have the amp going on here, but I don't have any mixing plugins on this at all. All the mixing plugins are on the bus. This feels wrong because you're skipping a lot of faders and you're skipping over a lot of solo buttons because you're mixing things in groups. But this is powerful for multiple reasons. One of the main reasons is because it saves you a ton of time, also saves you a ton of processing power because you're not adding the same EQ move to multiple different tracks. You're adding it to the guitars as a whole or the vocals as a whole. This is also how it used to be back in the day when they didn't have unlimited channels. They would send all of their drums to a stereo drum bus and they would make all of their tweaks there on analog hardware. Once we have unlimited tracks in the DAW, people feel the need to add plugins to every single track, but you don't have to. You can actually glue the guitars together and the vocals together and the drums together instead of it sounding kind of like a jumbled mess. Not only is top-down mixing faster, way more effective, and uses less processing power on your computer, I also think it sounds better, but that is personal preference there. Now, before we get into trick number 4, if you've been enjoying this so far, I have a free session breakdown where I break down one of my songs from start to finish. I break down the entire session and how I was able to make that song from start to finish, and you get the stems for it for free. I'll leave the link down in the description below for that. You can download the stems, follow along, and watch the entire session breakdown completely unedited. Tons of gold nuggets in there that I think you're going to enjoy. The link's down in the description below for that. Now on to trick number 4, and that is mixing into a limiter. On the same idea of top-down mixing where we're adding plugins to grouped buses, you can actually add plugins directly to the master bus, the 2 bus, the main bus, or whatever your DAW calls it. It's where everything goes to. And I always add a mastering chain first before I even get into mixing individual plugins. I want to know what it's going to sound like when it's mastered while I'm mixing. And a lot of times I will actually leave it. At the very least, I will put a limiter on the master bus, crank that gain knob up so that way I understand what it's going to sound like when it eventually gets to the point where it is mastered. Have you ever mixed something, went to the mastering side of things, and realized you had to fix stuff back in the mix again? This eliminates it. It feels wrong because you're mastering before mixing, but this is powerful because it forces you to make decisions that translate in the master later on. You mix for the real world right from the start. Now, trick number 5 is something that I don't see a lot of people doing, and people need to do this a lot more often. Instead of using a de-esser, you can use multi-band saturation. So what I could do is I can grab a plugin that allows me to add saturation just to certain frequencies. I'm using Multipass from Kilohertz, but Saturn 2 and other different plugins will do this as well. So what I want to do is I want to add just a bit of distortion on the high end of these vocals. I like the vocals, they sound great, but the sibilance is a bit harsh. But if I add de-essing, it starts to cut those frequencies that I do seem to like. I don't want those frequencies to disappear. I just want to smooth them out a little bit.
So come on over, it just feels so right.
So what I want to do is I want to put this on here right around 4,000 hertz, and then I want to add a bit of distortion to this and turn up the drive. It's going to distort those high-end frequencies, but it's going to smooth them out in the process. So it's not going to turn down those frequencies, but it's going to smooth out those frequencies overall.
We'll stay in and we'll stay up all night. My door is open, you can
And then in the context of the mix,
come inside. So let's make plans tonight. Make plans tonight.
listen to how those high-end frequencies don't disappear. In fact, they actually seem to be a bit more present, but they don't come in and out like you were hearing before. With it off, it sounds like the sibilance is coming in and out. But with it on, it sounds a bit brighter, but it's smoother overall.
Inside, so let's make plans tonight. Make plans inside, so let's make plans tonight. Make plans tonight.
This feels wrong because you're adding harmonics to the harshness, and you're not even really cutting those frequencies. But this works because it actually balances everything out overall. I liked those frequencies there. I just didn't want them to poke in and out every time the sibilance hit. So I was able to smooth that out with some saturation just on the top end and actually give those vocals a little sizzle while I was at it. And if you want to go a little bit further, you can even add some gentle de-essing after that to control that even further if you wanted to. If you like this video, you're going to love this video here, because in this video, I break down what plugins almost every successful producer uses. I see them then so many times to ignore. I had to make a video about it, and I break it down in this video here. I'll see you over there. Now, as always, go create.